Hello everybody, this is Danny from All God's Children. In our Bible study tonight, I've been asked a lot of questions here lately. People's been sending me a lot of messages and stuff. Guys, I'm going to do the best I can about this particular question that's been asked to me. It's a very deep subject. It's one that I don't know if I really have an answer for, but we're going to talk about it anyway. The question is, Danny, what's going to happen on September the 23rd, 2017? Guys, we're going to look in Revelations and we're going to look at a passage. And I'm sure y'all are already familiar with it, the ones who've asked. But we're going to look at it because we've got to. And that passage is found in Revelations chapter 12. The first two verses are going to be the first two that we're going to read to start with. Now, let's read those two verses. It says, "Now a great sign appeared in the heaven, a woman clothed with the sun, with the moon under her feet, and on her head a garland of 12 stars. Then, being with child, she cried out in labor and in pain to give birth." Guys, there is let me put it this way. According to everything that I've been able to find out, and I've been looking at this for quite some time because this is not something that just happened. This actually started happening back, this constellation actually came back in November of last year, around November, December, I don't remember the exact date, but this constellation actually came to be. This particular constellation has never been lined up the way it is now. This particular constellation is the constellation Virgo and Leo. It's two constellations that are together. Now, Virgo is a sign that means virgin. Leo is a lion. Now, this particular time, this constellation lineup has been before, but not like it is now. It has never been, according to what I've been able to look at in all the, the NASA sites and the different astronomical sites that you go to, astrological sites and stuff like that I've looked at. It says that the way it's lined up now, it has never been that way before, and it's never going to be that way again that they can find. Now, the difference this time is that this particular constellation is the way that everything's laid out with it. Now, it says in this particular constellation in Revelations, it says the woman will be clothed with the sun. Now, in this particular constellation of Virgo, you have the sun coming over her shoulder. And it says, and the moon will be under her feet. Well, in this particular constellation, this time, the moon is under the feet of Virgo. But now that within itself is not that unusual. But here's the unusual part. Jupiter is the planet that is moving around within her belly. This particular planet started some 9.5 months ago, moving around inside the belly of Virgo, going back and forth in it. And on September the 23rd, it's actually going to move down and pass between the legs of this constellation and leave out on September the 23rd, giving this significance of giving birth. Now, Jupiter is said to be the king planet, so to speak. So if this constellation is anything that's spoken of in Revelation, it would be the constellation of a virgin giving birth to a king. And this is not only all that there is to go with this, to do with this particular constellation. This constellation it speaks about has 12 stars on its head. Well, now, Leo, the constellation Leo doesn't have 12 stars in it. It only has 9. Well, Leo is a lion, supposedly from the way they're looking at it is from the tribe, like lion, the tribe of Judah. But now, this particular time in this constellation, there's 3 additional stars there. Mars, Mercury, and Venus are right underneath Leo, lining up with it. Which 9 and 3 gives it 12 stars above its head. Now, does this mean anything? Guys, you have to understand the prophecy that's given here in Revelations is given for the nation of Israel. Now, is anything going to happen? You know, I can't answer that. Everybody's saying, oh my gosh, this is the sign of the rapture. You know, guys, I'm not going to say that. I'd be glad if it was. I'll be honest with you. But I can't look at y'all here on All God's Children and tell you that this is a sign of the rapture. Because I just don't know. Is it unusual? Yes. Do I think it has some sort of significant meaning? Yes. I do believe it has a significant meaning. Now, in Genesis 1 and 14, we have the Lord speaking about creation at that point. He says there will be, the stars are in the heavens are given to us for times and for signs and seasons and stuff. So, beings Christ, God made that statement in Genesis 1:14, then there is something to stars in heavens, meaning for being there for a sign. They're there for seasons. What a lot of people don't realize is that in all of the ancient Jewish temples, or I can't call them Jewish, I'll say Hebraic temples, because the Jews weren't around. They didn't actually come into existence being called Jews until after the Babylonian Empire. The Hebrew tabernacles and temples and stuff like that, there was the zodiac. I'm going to call it the zodiac sign. There was a big giant circle in the floor, and it had all the signs and the symbols in it. That was in every one of the temples that were built. Now, it's mankind that has taken these signs and made them evil through astrology and soothsayers and stuff like that, and horoscopes and things like that. God gave us signs for planting. He gave us signs for, and a lot of y'all, I know in this country, it doesn't mean a lot to a lot of people, especially in some different religious backgrounds, but the feast days. The feast days are very important. A lot of people go, that just has to do with Israel. Well, yes and no. Because, yes, it did have to do with Israel. But God said, these are my appointed times to meet with man. Now, these are God's appointed times. So, but God used them with Israel. I'll say that. But these are God's appointed times. And for those of you who's done any kind of in-depth study in the scriptures, you'll realize that even during the millennial reign, after the tribulation and everything, we're going to go back to some of the feasts or those appointed times. Let me say that because people get offended a lot of times when you say feast. Let's just say appointed times. They're God's appointed times. Some of those are still going to be observed during the millennial reign. As a matter of fact, if you go over and read in Isaiah, it will tell you that Christ will require everyone during the millennial reign to come on certain feasts. And if you don't, he will withhold the rain from you if you don't come to the feast. So we see that it's going to be, these signs and these appointed times are extremely important to God. Now, September the 23rd is the feast. Let's say the Feast of Trumpets actually begins. I think if I remember correctly, September the 21st through sunset the 21st through maybe sunset the 22nd or somewhere right in there, and then the 23rd is the beginning of the Jewish New Year. And I believe the beginning of the Jewish New Year this particular year will be the year 5778. But the beginning of September the 23rd will be the end of the Jewish year 5777. Now, and there's a lot of speculation out there that this number has a specific number. Now, I used to teach biblical numerology. 5 being a number of grace, 7 being the first of 3 complete numbers in the Bible. 7 is a number of completeness, but when you said 5 being a number of grace, through God's grace, they're saying, doing the numerology on this particular number, through God's grace, God's divine completeness happens. And because there's 3 sevens, they say it's multiplied by 3, the completeness of it, which makes it divine. So through the grace of God, some sort of divine completeness is going to happen with the nation of Israel. Now, could something happen? Yes, something could very well happen. There was a Jewish rabbi by the name of Ben Samuel back in 1217 who prophesied about a vision that he had been given from Elijah. He talked about in the vision about 6 jubilees or 300 years. A jubilee is 50 years, or for the Hebrew people, a yovel is 50 years. He talked about for 300 years that there would be a prophecy that would be fulfilled, that the Turks would take over. And they did take over Jerusalem, exactly like he prophesied. And then in his prophecy, he said that Elijah also told him that in 8 more jubilees, or 400 more years, that the British would come in and the British invasion would take over. And literally, it's kind of funny, this story talks about how the British flew planes over, and the Turks had never seen planes, and they thought it was something from the gods, and they just left Jerusalem. They just left, and they was able to go in and take it over. But this prophecy came to be exactly on the day that Ben Samuel said that it would. Now, that particular day was 1917. And from 1917, Ben Samuel said that in another Jubilee, that one Jubilee later, that the Jews would take Jerusalem back. Well, from 1917 to 1967, that's exactly what happened on the 6th day of war of Yom Kippur. And then Ben Samuel had one more prophetic event. He said in 50 years after that, that Israel would have a peace treaty signed. Well, guys, 50 years after that would be 2017, September of 2017. September 23rd is what they're saying. I don't know all this to be exactly fact. I'm just telling you what I've researched, and this is what I've found. Is it possible that beings, this constellation is spoken of in Revelations is definitely for the Jews? It's for Israel. Is it possible that something major like the signing of a peace treaty could happen on that day? It's quite possible. Because let's stop and back up a little bit. Those of you who remember, December the 23rd of this past year, 2016, was a significant time, because that was a time when the United Nations met to talk about the land of Israel and talked about dividing it, saying that part of Israel actually never really belonged to them. They wanted to give it back to the Palestinians, And this particular time, our president set out on it and didn't vote. And it kind of just, because it was just in limbo there, and so it didn't pass. And December the 23rd till September the 23rd is exactly 9 months, the time of a birth. Now, is there any significance to this? It's quite possible that the birth of the peace treaty could very possibly happen. Now, am I saying it's going to happen? No. I'm saying there's all these possibilities out there that something could happen. Now, we personally here at our place, Wanda and I, or Deep South Homestead is our channel, for those of you who don't know. That's our YouTube channel. We teach about prepping and getting ready. And y'all, I'm just going to be 100% honest with you. I've got my hopes up so many times that something was going to happen and nothing happened, that when I see things like this come up, I'm a little bit hesitant. I've been very hesitant about even doing this video. But I've been hesitant about even doing a video because I don't want to get my hopes up, because I think that's what happens to a lot of born-again believers, is they get their hopes up, and for generations, people's been saying, oh, that Christ is fixing to come back. The rapture is fixing to happen. Well, I'm not going to sit here and tell you that, because I don't want to get my hopes up, and I don't want to get your hopes up. I would love it if it happened. But I've been burnt so many times by these things that they say is going to happen, that I'm quite hesitant. Even though I read in the scriptures about this constellation, and in my heart, I want to believe something is going to happen. Now, what it is, I do not know. I will tell you that. But I believe the possibility of something happening is pretty great. Because you got to realize, in August of this year, we're going to have a massive solar eclipse. You know, there's going to be the darkening of the sky. We've been through the blood moons, the tetrads, this past 15 and 16. We've had the 3 different blood moons, and all these blood moons pointed to something happening to Israel. Well, it almost happened. In December this year, there was almost a dividing of the land. And these tetrads always, when they leaned toward Israel, there was always something to do with the land. Well, this time there was a blocking of it for some reason. Now, could something happen on September the 23rd, 9 months after the UN resolution? It's quite possible. It really is quite possible. Now, a lot of people are talking about the Feast of Trumpets this year. What are some of the significances of the Feast of Trumpets this year? Well, I'm going to list off a few things here that's actually taking place. Is that the anniversary, let me put it this way, of September 23rd is the anniversary of what I've been able to find out of some of these things that are happening. Now, I can't tell you if it's September 23rd or if it's just September, because I've done so much research, guys, till my mind is just twisted right now. I'm fighting getting through this video with y'all, trying to remember all the stuff that I've studied. First off, these are anniversaries that I'm going to mention to y'all of different things that I've come across. This will be the 70th anniversary of the UN resolution for Israel becoming a nation, for the first thing. Secondly, it's the 50th, it's a jubilee for Jerusalem. It's the 50th year since Jerusalem was taken back over by the Jews. It's the anniversary of that. It is Israel's 500th anniversary of the Reformation that took place. It is the 70th anniversary of the Dead Sea Scrolls being found. 2017 is the 70th Jubilee from the Exodus out of Egypt. And as I mentioned earlier, It marks the 5,777th year on the Jewish calendar. Is there some significance to all of this? God in biblical numerology is said to be the great geometrician. He does everything in order. He does everything numerically. And if you read through the Bible, you will see that God does everything numerically. You know, in my teaching of these things, you always see this horizontal line going across and have these marks in it talking about, well, from this point to this point was the Adamic period, and then from this point to this point was the Noahic period, and from this point to this point was the Abrahamic period, and then from this point to this point was the Davidic period. And guys, I'm here to tell you, nothing about God is done in a straight line. God is a cylindrical God. Everything God does is in a circle. Look at the planets. They're all circles. Look at the solar system. They're all circles. Look at the rising and the setting of the suns. They're all circles. 59 minutes is not an hour. If you go all the way around 59 minutes until you come back to the 60th minute, you have not completed a circle. God is cylindrical. You have to make a complete revolution to get back to the beginning. A wedding ring is a circle. It signifies a never-ending love between two people. When God put the rainbow in the skies, He put it in an arch, because it's cylindrical. God is cylindrical. He does everything in cycles. Every 50th Yovel or Jubilee, God does something. He told the Israelites, every 7 years you let your land rest. Every 50th year is a year of Yovel or Jubilee. Everything is to divert back to the people, the land or whatever. Diverts back to the people. Anyone's a slave is released at the 50th year. God does everything in order, but it's all done cylindrical. So keep that in mind when you're speaking about the universe, speaking about these constellations, speaking about the heavens. Everything about God, keep that in mind. God is a cylindrical God. What he mentions to Solomon, Solomon says, what is has been before. Nothing is new. There's nothing under the sun new. It's because it has all happened before. Because God is cylindrical. God is everlasting. He's ever loving. His love is without end, in other words. So we see that God is a cylindrical God. So when you look at these things, these patterns in the heavens, understand that God works through signs and wonders in the heavens. Now, is this on September the 23rd going to mean anything particular? Guys, it could. I'm not going to sit here and be someone who tells you, yes, this is going to happen. Because if you go back and read in the Torah, there's a verse in there, I can't recall right off the top of my head where it's located at, but it's there, that says, if a prophet prophesies and it doesn't come true, he's a false prophet. And it only has to happen once in his lifetime. He's a false prophet. So therefore, I will not sit here and tell you that, yes, this is going to happen on September the 23rd, because I don't want to go down in history as being some guy who made a prediction or prophesied that this was going to happen and it did not happen. That would make me a false prophet or someone who's not worthy to be listened to. I've got more wisdom about me than that, because I know what the scripture says. What I'm going to tell you is there is a great possibility that something could happen. Now, after looking at this particular part of it, I want us to go and look. This is not the mysterious part to me. The mysterious part of all of this is the next verses that read beyond verses 1 and 2 of Revelation chapter 12. Now, I want to look down because in verses 3 and on, I want you to look at what it says here. And another sign appeared in heaven. Behold, a great fiery red dragon, having 7 heads and 10 horns and 7 diadems on his heads. His tail drew 1/3 of the stars of heaven and threw them to the earth. And the dragon stood before the woman, who was ready to give birth, to devour her child as soon as it was born. She bore a male child, who was to rule all nations with a rod of iron, and her child was caught up to God and his throne. And it goes on to talk about the woman fled into the wilderness, and she was there for 3.5 years, and she was protected by the earth, and so on. But I want to look at it right after this constellation we read about, with the woman being clothed in the sun with the moon under her feet, going into birth pains and giving birth. It says, and there was another sign in heaven. Well, guys, when this particular constellation is visible on September the 23rd, the real weird part about this is there's a constellation sitting right beside her. It's called the constellation of Draco. Draco is said to be the red dragon. Now, this is really what's really weird about this. The other constellation is there also. Now, on the constellation Draco, there is a constellation above Draco's head called Bootes, or it's Bootes, however you say that. And this particular constellation has 10 stars above its head. And that's not even the weird part. There's also another constellation there. And I'm not sure I'll pronounce all these just right because I'm not a scholar in this stuff. But it's called the Corona Borealis, maybe is how it's pronounced. But this particular constellation has 7 stars that shines in a crown form. And guys, the weird part about all this is that other constellation is there at exactly the same time as the woman that's giving birth, clothed in the sun with the moon under her feet, with the 12 stars above her head. This other one with Draco and Bootes and the Corona Borealis, all these are right there beside that, like it's watching, waiting for the woman to give birth. Now it says that this dragon went after the woman child. Now let's just break it down. The woman is Israel. Let's just go ahead and say that. The child that it gave birth to was Christ. And it was caught back up into heaven. We know Christ died. He went back to heaven. But if you read on, and I'm going to get a little bit deep here, and it may offend some of y'all, I don't know. But guys, keep an open mind about what we're doing here tonight. If you read on down in Revelation chapter 12, is probably, you got to realize when John wrote the book of Revelations, it's not in chronological order. John when he had a vision, he had it from beginning to end, and he wrote what he saw, and God would give him visions at different times, and so he would see different parts of the end of the age and the end of time as we knew it. So the end of the chapter is what's really intriguing to me after we get to this point. Now, I want to read the end of the chapter, and I want to show you what it says. Now, you got to realize that Israel has fled into the desert. She's being held. They've got a place there. A lot of people call it Petra, different places where she's protected. The Scripture says the earth opens up and devours the sea that comes out of the dragon's mouth. And the dragon gets all upset. Satan gets upset because he can't get to the woman child, or Israel, that brought forth the male child, which is Christ, because the earth won't let him. So in his fit of rage, because he's done been thrown out of heaven at this time, in his fit of rage, he goes after, I want you to see, I'm going to read it to you first. Revelation chapter 12, it's in verse 17. It says, and the dragon was enraged with the woman and went to make war with the rest of her offspring who keep the commandments of God and have the testimony of Jesus Christ. Now, when he realized that he could not get his hands on Israel, what does it say? I just read it to you right there. It said he went after the offspring. What is the offspring? It's the Christians. He went after the Christians. Who did he talk about? Those who keep the commandments, those who follow Jesus Christ, or Yeshua, Yahushua, however you want to say it, those who follow him. My fellow brothers, if the church is not here, how can he go after the Christians? I'm just saying, I'm not going to argue with anybody about pre-tribulation, mid-tribulation, or whatever. That is your belief. That is your way of looking at things. I mean, each and every one of us have our own way of looking at everything. And that's a point that I won't argue, because it's really, some people go, yes, it's nailed down in stone. Some go, it's nailed down this way. And some people say it's nailed down that way. Look, I have studied the Bible from front to back. I can make a case for both. I am not going to sit here and tell you I'm a pre-trib. I'm a mid-trib. Okay? I'm going to just go ahead and say that. But I'm not going to argue with you if you're a pre-trib, because I'm going to pray you're right and I'm wrong. But this right here tells me that when Satan realizes he can't get to Israel, he says, I'm going after those who keep the commandments of Jesus Christ. That's the born-again believers at this particular time. And if there are no Christians left on earth, who is he going after? Where do these born-again believers come from? I'm just saying. I'm just telling you what I read right here. Don't get offended with me if you're a pre-trib person. I was a pre-trib 90% of my life. It's only until I began to start opening up the scriptures and I started reading and I started studying that I even come across the fact that I'm a mid-trib. I want to believe pre-trib. And I know that the Thessalonians chapter verse is going to be thrown at me. I know that. But my friends, if there's no Christians left on earth and the rapture's already happened, who is Satan going after here? I've always been raised to say, well, after the 4th chapter in the book of Revelations, the church is not mentioned anymore because there's no Christians left. The Holy Spirit's gone. Guys, I know there's no mention of the Holy Spirit after that. There's not, and I'll agree with that. But there are believers right here that are mentioned. Who are they? Where did they come from? Are they ones that believed after the rapture? I am not going to argue that point. But what I'm going to tell you is, Satan goes after the followers of Jesus Christ. Because it says so right here. And this is in chapter 12 in Revelations. So, those who tell me that there are no Christians after the rapture, I can't go along with that theory, because they're mentioned right here. So, once again, is anything going to happen September 23rd? I don't know. But I tell you what, I am going to get my house in order. Just in case. I'll say that. I'm prepping hard. Because in the scriptures, the Lord gives us a parable of the 10 virgins. 5 of them carried extra oil, 5 of them carried just enough to get them to where they were going. The master came during the night and said, get up, let's go on the journey. The ones that had the extra oil got up, relit their lanterns, got ready to go. The ones that didn't bring but just enough to get there said, well, give us some of your oil. And the master said, no, go back to where you got your oil from and get you some more. And when they left to go back, the ones that had the extra oil left. They got left behind. My friends, I don't want to be one that gets left behind. I don't want to be one that has just enough to get me to what I want to do. I want to have enough to go beyond where I need to go. That's why on our channel, Deep South Homestead, we prep. We stock up. We prepare. because it's not because we think it's the end of the world. It could be any life-changing event. But guys, it could be for something just like this right here fixing to happen. And the bottom line is this. If you're a born-again believer and you're here on the face of this earth, you're here for a reason, and that's to help others. And if we spend all this time preparing and we're called out of here, and all this food is left here, I have told my neighbors, because I know they're not born-again believers, a lot of them. I've told them, don't go hungry. There's food at my house. Y'all come get it. Because I'm not going to be here. So guys, I would strongly advise you. People always say, Danny, do you think something's going to happen? Yes, I do think something's going to happen. When? I can't guarantee you when. But I know it's going to happen because Matthew chapter 24 and Revelations tells me that something's going to happen. I think we're right at the threshold. 1948, May of 1948, Israel became a nation again. I think the prophetic time clock began to tick at that point again. And if you read Matthew chapter 24 and all that discourse there, you'll find out God says, this generation will not pass away till these things come to pass. And the things he's talking about is famine, earthquakes in diverse places, all kind of pestilences, all kind of things are going to have wars, rumors of wars, nations against nation, kingdom against kingdom. All these things are going to happen before the coming of the Son of Man. Are we there? You know what? I'll say we're getting real close, y'all. In my heart, I believe we're right on the threshold of something major happening. I'm not going to sit here and tell you what I think it is, because I don't want to go down in history as being someone who said something that didn't come true. But I will tell you this. If September the 23rd comes and goes and nothing happens, I'll just keep living my life and I'll keep preparing and I'll keep stocking up, because I'm not stocking up just for me. I'm stocking up because if something happens to me and I'm out of here, there's people left in this neighborhood right here that's going to need food. I'm trying to help take care of them. Or if some other event takes place, I got food enough to feed me and my family and my neighbors that need to be. So, I'm going to end all God's children there today, y'all. I know I may not have been very informative about September the 23rd. I gave you a little information because it's so much to take in. I could have got a little something all out of whack there because it's a lot of information to retain in one's head. But I did the best I could, and I may do another one later on if I get a little bit more information on and find out some more stuff. I may update it if I find out anything new. But up to this point, I just want to say thank y'all for sitting in on this Bible study, and hopefully we learned something. Hopefully we saw that that God does have a time clock. God has appointed times for him. You'll find that in Genesis. The first part of Genesis, as a matter of fact. So I want to say thank you for y'all sitting here and listening to me as I've tried to present this the best way I could. And hopefully it's answered some of y'all's questions about September the 23rd of 2017. So thank y'all from all God's children.